You can just feel it, man. This season has that vibe where anything could happen with the Vikings. One minute everybody's doubting this team, the next minute they're ripping off huge wins and making the entire NFC nervous. And honestly, that's what makes this season so exciting. There are so many storylines, so many revenge games, and so much pressure on this roster to finally prove they can compete with the elite teams when it matters most. If this team gets hot at the right time, U.S. Bank Stadium is going to be absolutely insane late in the year. Now, I want to hear from you. What's your prediction for the Vikings this season? Drop it in the comments, and let me know if you think SKOL season is coming. And don't forget to like the video if you're riding with the purple all year long. There's one detail buried inside this Vikings schedule prediction that should immediately grab the attention of every Minnesota fan. The season might not actually be defined by how the Vikings start. It could be defined by how they survive the middle of the year. And if this prediction somehow becomes reality, Vikings fans are going to experience one of the most emotional roller coasters the franchise has seen in years. Because according to this full game-by-game breakdown from Vikings Now by Chat Sports, Minnesota could realistically open the season looking like a legitimate Super Bowl contender before suddenly hitting a brutal wall that sends the entire fan base into panic mode. And the most fascinating part? The conversation constantly comes back to one central question nobody truly knows the answer to yet. What version of Kyler Murray are the Vikings actually getting? The prediction starts aggressively optimistic right away. The hosts immediately pick the Vikings to beat Green Bay in Week 1 at US Bank Stadium, and the reasoning goes deeper than simple rivalry hype. They point directly at the mismatch between Minnesota's receiving core and the Packers' secondary, arguing that Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, and Jawan Jennings could completely overwhelm Green Bay's defensive backs. There's also a huge emphasis on the uncertainty factor surrounding Minnesota's offense early in the season. Since opponents still won't fully understand how Kevin O'Connell plans to deploy Kyler Murray, the belief is that the Packers could walk into Week 1 completely unprepared for what the Vikings' attack actually looks like. And there's another layer here that Vikings fans will absolutely love hearing. Brian Flores keeps getting brought up as the ultimate equalizer. The hosts repeatedly mention how difficult Flores' defense is for quarterbacks early in seasons, especially younger passers like Jordan Love and Caleb Williams. That's why they project Minnesota opening the year 2-0, with wins over both Green Bay and Chicago. But what's interesting is that even during the optimistic portions of the prediction, there's still caution. They openly acknowledge how dangerous Chicago could become this season. Caleb Williams is described as someone who might be the future of the NFL, and there's clear respect for the Bears' trajectory. Yet the Vikings still get the edge because Flores apparently figured out Ben Johnson's offense late last season. That's a massive statement when you think about how explosive Chicago is expected to be offensively. Then comes the first major warning sign for Minnesota. The trip to Tampa Bay in Week 3 is treated almost like a classic Vikings trap game. The hosts specifically mention the brutal Florida heat, Baker Mayfield's ability to get hot early in seasons, and the possibility that Minnesota enters the matchup emotionally overconfident after 2 divisional wins. Both predictors immediately hand the Vikings their first loss there. And honestly, this is where the overall tone of the schedule prediction starts becoming fascinating. Because it's not just random win-loss guesses. There's a repeated theme throughout the discussion. Minnesota's season could become extremely streaky. One of the hosts literally predicts a year where the Vikings dominate early, completely collapse during the middle stretch, and then suddenly catch fire again entering the playoffs. After Tampa, though, optimism returns quickly. The Dolphins' matchup at home is viewed as extremely favorable for Minnesota. The breakdown almost dismisses Miami's offense entirely outside of Devon Achane. They argue the Dolphins lack elite receiving weapons and believe Brian Flores' defense can completely neutralize what Miami wants to do offensively. Again, Flores becomes the centerpiece of the confidence surrounding this team. Then comes one of the most emotional storylines on the schedule: Justin Jefferson returning to New Orleans. The hosts sound almost convinced Jefferson is going to explode statistically in that game, throwing out predictions of 150 receiving yards in his hometown. But beyond Jefferson, the Vikings are simply described as a significantly more talented roster than the Saints overall. Even in a difficult road environment, Minnesota is projected to move to 4-1 before the bye week. And this is where Vikings fans should really pay attention. Because after the Colts game, where Minnesota is projected to improve to 5-1, the entire conversation changes dramatically. The tone shifts from excitement to concern. The hosts repeatedly warn about what they call the gauntlet portion of the schedule: Detroit, Buffalo, Green Bay, San Francisco. That four-game stretch is basically described as the moment where Minnesota's entire season gets tested psychologically. The prediction has the Vikings losing to Detroit first, with revenge being a massive factor after Minnesota embarrassed the Lions last season and swept them. Dan Campbell is portrayed almost like a coach waiting all off-season for payback. Then, the Bills arrive on Monday Night Football. And this might be the most revealing section of the entire discussion because it shows exactly how respected Josh Allen still is around the league. The hosts flat out say Minnesota may need to score over 30 points just to survive that game. One quote stands out in particular: "Brian Flores is great, but it's Josh Allen." That single sentence basically summarizes the fear surrounding that matchup. At this point in the prediction, panic officially starts creeping in around the Vikings. The hosts even describe how fans would likely react emotionally if the team fell from 5-1 to 5-4 during that brutal stretch. And then comes Lambeau Field in November, another game where weather suddenly becomes part of the conversation surrounding Kyler Murray. That's one of the biggest underlying storylines throughout this entire prediction. Not once do they question Kyler Murray's talent. The concern is entirely about consistency, cold weather, and whether he can handle difficult late-season environments inside the NFC North. That uncertainty never fully disappears during the discussion. And the really wild part? According to one of the hosts, this potential losing streak could become so severe that Vikings fans might start calling for J.J. McCarthy to take over midway through the season. That single possibility changes the entire atmosphere surrounding this prediction. Because suddenly, this isn't just about wins and losses anymore. It becomes about quarterback pressure, fan expectations, and whether Minnesota's locker room could survive adversity if things spiral during the hardest part of the schedule. And honestly, if the Vikings somehow really start 5-1 before collapsing during that middle stretch, do you think fans would already be demanding J.J. McCarthy by November? Or would you still trust Kyler Murray to recover and lead this team into the playoffs? So comment below what you think the Vikings' final record will be in 2026. Do you predict 12-5? 11-6? Or do you think this team can surprise even more? I want to read everyone's opinion in the comments. And if you enjoy Vikings content every day, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell because the season promises to be absolutely insane for Minnesota. SKOL Vikings.